Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings. But this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018. And no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. Hannah Stowe is the author of Move Like Water, My Story of the Sea. Hannah lives in Dresden, Germany, writing, painting, and sailing her own boat named Larry. FYI, it was recently a New York Times editor's pick. Welcome, Hannah. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Move Like Water, My Story of the Sea, a memoir.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so honored to have you on. First of all, beautiful story in so many different ways. Can you tell listeners a little bit about why the memoir and tell them a little bit more about your whole, aquatic existence, so to speak?
So I grew up in Pembrokeshire in West Wales, which is a peninsula. So it's surrounded by the sea on three sides. The weather there is quite a big factor of living there. So you get these really strong southwesterlies, which is a tropical maritime wind, which blows, I guess, northeast. So sort of from the Azores up towards the UK. And it's this like warm, wet wind that brings kind of this whole salt slick with it. So I kind of grew up being quite immersed in the water, whether you wanted to be or not. So it's Britain's only coastal national park. So the marine life there is really abundant. And growing up there, I kind of took it for granted because you just think that's normal and that's what everyone experiences. But I'd walk on the coast path and there'd be like seals in the water and breeding on the beaches. And I'd watch them have their pups every year. And probably early summer, there'll still be some late pups being born now, even though the autumn storms are starting to sweep in. Growing up there, it just was really like the marine life was all around you. And I guess that was sort of coupled with my upbringing. And then when I got towards the age of from 16 onwards, I do remember feeling like this huge itch to travel and adventure and explore. And I just got obsessed with the idea of seeing what was over the horizon. So I started working on a tourist boat when I was 18, which did trips around Ramsey Island, which is a RSPB reserve, which is a charity for birds in the UK. So I started working there, but really soon afterwards started sailing. And my first sort of big breakthrough was on a boat off the coast of Canada, which was a sailing boat. And we were doing research for someone's PhD on northern bottlenose whales. So I was there to sail the boat, but doing the research was really amazing. It's definitely was really a life-changing trip. So afterwards, I started studying marine biology. And then I combined the two things. So working as a sailor and studying marine biology. So I ended up doing sort of cetaceans like whale, dolphin, and porpoise research based off sailing boats. And I was having all these experiences, which were really wild to me. It was like living in Blue Planet or like some nature documentary, but also so removed from anything anyone in my family had done. So I was writing these letters home all the time. So it sort of came from there. And then also another scientist that I was working with, I used to keep these journals, which were like research and travel journals. And I used to illustrate them and it was just for me. But one day I was going through one of them and he saw it and he was like, "What are you doing with this? Like, you should publish this." And then that's kind of how it started.
Wow, amazing. Tell me what the rest of your family, when you were writing the letters, tell me about that, and nobody else was interested in what lurked beyond the horizon?
I think they were very interested, but if I go from my mother's family, like my grandmother was from the most working class family, which I think is like blue collar is the equivalent in the US. So she left school at 14 to work because she had to. And then, she doesn't have a passport. She's never left the UK. I think she sort of lived within her horizons. My mum's an artist and illustrator and writer also, but she sort of went a bit further. And then I feel like she sort of expanded this sphere a little bit. And then just in how she brought me up, I think she really just gave me the confidence to or delusion to do whatever I felt like I wanted to do. And I feel like, my mum's lived on the coast. Like she lives where I grew up, but she's never been to sea in the same way. She's never been out of the sight of land. And it's something that she'd really love to do. She hasn't been hugely well in the last few years, but she's just had a surgery and recovery. And one part of that is going to be her coming on my boat with me, and we're going to take her on an adventure.
Oh, that's so nice. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I loved what you wrote about all of your work and all of that. And what really hit home for me and that I couldn't stop thinking about was your own personal physical journey, your injury, your recovery, your relationship to pain, and the way you wrote through that, which I found incredibly gripping. And just, I felt so badly for you and was like, oh my gosh, get another opinion. I wanted to leap through the book and get you to the right hospital and all that. Can you talk a little about what happened and where things went wrong, what you would do differently? I don't know, maybe not that you could have done anything differently. It was the system, of course, but just so frustrating that this happened to you and how you feel about the whole thing.
Yeah, it's quite wild. So I had a spinal injury in 2017, I think, around 6 or 7 years ago. I was surfing and my back got squished by a wave, and I knew I'd hurt myself, but I didn't really know how much. And I always thought a spinal injury would be super traumatic and you wouldn't be able to walk, which in some cases is the case, but in other cases it's not. And I knew something was wrong with me, but I kept going to doctors and I kept being really dismissed. And one doctor she didn't even do any physical examination of me at all. She just said, well, you look really healthy. And I'm like, yeah, because the problem's in my spine, not in my face.
Oh my gosh.
I think this is a global problem, but I think I only really know about the UK healthcare system, but it is not set up for women to be believed with conditions they have. It's almost like you have to prove how bad things are for you to just get basic care. And this doesn't really seem to be getting any better. But basically, I had fractured a vertebrae. I had a herniated, dehydrated disc. And I had one surgery. When they eventually took it seriously, I basically went from being told, you're fine, go away, to, oh, you actually need surgery straight away. Which was quite I don't know, I think part of me knew that, but it was also quite a shocking experience. I think I was 23 or 22, very early 20s. And it's just not something that you expect to experience. And the funny thing is, when I started writing the book, I wasn't 100% sure how much I was going to talk about it, just because it still felt like quite a raw experience for me and quite a lot to unpick and unpack. But while I was writing the book, I'd only written one chapter and I actually re-injured my back again, which was only because it was never actually fixed properly the first time. So even after I had these very invalidating experiences, I started going back to the surgeon who did my surgery and just saying I didn't feel right. And he said, well, I can't see what the problem is, which should have been, I can't see what the problem is, so I'm going to investigate and find out. But it made me feel like, oh, maybe I'm the problem. So I re-injured my back, and all I did to re-injure it was I was just turning over in bed. And I was really lucky because I just finished a really long sailing trip, and it would have been so catastrophically bad if it had happened a week before. So while I was writing the book, I actually ended up, my previous experience was definitely the worst experience of my life, and I didn't expect it to happen again. And then when I realized that is what was happening again, that was quite a jarring moment. But I think it was good for the book because it sort of let me re-explore for the first time. And then while I was writing the book, I ended up getting a second surgery, and that has been a really positive experience. It's completely fixed now. I have a great neurosurgeon who actually was the first person to apologize to me. He was the first person to take into account female hormones and how they affect your back and flexibility and things like that. And it just seemed crazy to me that this is the first person who's even considered this as if you have a monthly cycle, which you're going to have for a really long time, who's the first person who's actually considered how that will affect mobility and things like that. So
how does it affect mobility?
So if you're menstruating like around that time, you will be more flexible. And I was always way more prone to hurting myself like in those periods because I'm hypermobile anyway. And then it was like causing more problems without really knowing to sort of take that down.
So does that mean during those times now you're a lot more careful?
Yeah, well, I'm actually having a baby like next month.
Oh no, that's amazing.
So I have all of the relaxing, and I was worried about like my joints through this process, but just knowing to be really careful, I've been completely fine. So it's great.
Congratulations. That's really exciting. Can I read a passage or two about when you got hurt and your relationship to pain and healing and all that?
Mm-hmm.
So when you hurt yourself, I just wanted to read when this happened. For a minute, I was going, carried along with the wave, and then, without intending to, I pulled back. I didn't feel in control of my body. It was too late, and the wave took me with it anyway, tumbling head over heels as the crest broke. Surfacing, gasping for air, eyes and nose streaming. I grabbed for my board and tried again. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get it together. I was never in the right place. Up was down was up as I was tumbled over and over. The water no longer held me. It threw me. A cat playing with a mouse. I did not know this water. I did not know this self. My pulse was racing, my breath fast, shallow, panicked. My chest felt like it was being pressed inwards. I knew I needed to get to the shore and started to paddle. A large wave caught me from behind. I hadn't heard it coming. The noise inside my own head suddenly too loud for me to hear the water. I couldn't even fathom trying to ride it as the water crashed. It jarred me down hard into my board and held me there. My eyes stung with tears. I was burning. Lungs, back, ankle. I was rolled over and over until the water shallowed and I was unceremoniously dumped on the shore. Wow, you're like in it with you reading that. Does it feel weird to just hear it, or do you like immediately feel like you're in it again?
So that chapter of the book, I've only read it to edit it. Like I've never read it as a whole. And I think like I wanted to write it in like the way that it was. And I feel like if my writing's ever good, it's very immersive. But if that means I'm also there too. So I trust my editor a lot. Both my UK and US editors are just absolutely great. And I trusted them to tell me if anything was there that shouldn't be there. But when I was asked to read the audiobook, I did say no, because I don't think I'd be able to get through that chapter.
Oh,
yeah.
Although your voice is amazing. I could just listen to you speak all day. Okay, so this is your response later to pain. This is just how you had to walk differently. My walk was slow with a slight limp as I tried to keep up. My friend's regular gait always half a step in front of mine. That half step seemed like a mile. It felt as if I was watching everyone else walk on with their lives while I fell behind. I tried to walk down to the water as much as I could. There were good days where I could make it and stare out over the winter sea, and I would remember my why I was still studying, why I got out of bed each day. There were bad days too when the walk was too far or too depressingly difficult. I felt like I was being given more and more to deal with, a tightrope set higher and higher, and yet all my methods of finding balance, running, swimming, yoga, walking, all of my safety nets were being pulled away. The one thing I did still have were pens for my hands, paint, brushes. Every night I poured out all the things I could never find the words to say out loud, pages and pages written to myself, pep talks, the things I was grateful for. I couldn't sail anymore. I could hardly stand on dry land, let alone on the swell of the sea. I couldn't venture offshore into the world of the whale. So, in my little room, I painted it, the seas, the stars, the skies, the spray. Really beautiful. You're a beautiful writer.
When I started writing, like I think most people write when they're a kid, and then I'd stopped and then started again at that point. So yeah.
And what about the actual painting? Are you still doing that? How much does that help with your narrative and like creativity in general?
Yeah, I think I'm quite a visual person, and sometimes the images come first. So the book first came out in the UK, and for the UK edition, like I ended up...
Wait, hold up the cover of the UK edition. I went, oh, beautiful. So for people listening, the US cover is more illustrated, almost like a watercolor of a whale with drops and birds and a boat in the back and very, move. I can't explain anything. This is why but the UK cover is much more visual and like a white background, navy bottom with just this giant whale bursting out of the water.
Yeah, so this is a humpback that I painted, and this one's also illustrated, and I think the images came first. It's just another way of communicating, isn't it? I think sometimes you have to be like almost smarter than using words because you are trying to. And I think it's also, I like having the words and the images together. I think just because it's nonfiction, it doesn't mean that you have to sort of separate these two things. Yeah. But with regards to like actual painting, I was doing the cover for the book, UK one, right before my second surgery, which I probably shouldn't have done. And it was really painful to do it. So I've had like a bit of a mental block around painting since for over a year, which is kind of frustrating. And I'm hoping I will get through it at some point.
Oh my gosh. Is there a place where you have all the illustrations?
Well, I've actually just put them on. I have just finished redesigning my website. So I just put them on yesterday.
Yesterday. Yeah. Okay. One last paragraph. This is about healing. I have since had a lot of time to reflect on healing. I now know that recovery is rarely like any of the triumphant comeback stories that are portrayed in the media. The reality is a visceral, gritty struggle of progress, uncomfortable lessons, and setbacks, and it is unclear when the process ends. For me, there was the physical side of healing, the side that needed surgery, a side that 5 years later means I still need injections in my spine and I will always need physiotherapy. And now, of course, we know you had a second surgery. Okay, yeah. But there is also the mental side, which is less often spoken about, as well as the part where physical and mental combine. For me, I think healing is like a garden. You have to choose the right location for the right plants, the place where they can grow. You must provide sunlight, water, and nutrients. You must prune with a gentle hand and rip out any weeds that will inhibit and stifle. It is not a linear process. It comes in cycles, in seasons with dormant periods. And you need to give it time, which was the hardest thing for me to understand. The pace of my life had always been extreme. I had reached out for anything I ever wanted, worked for it until it was mine. I did not understand how to be slow, how to be still.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally relate to that. Oh my gosh. It's so hard for anybody to just like take their normal life and be like, oh, okay, so this happened and now I have to change everything and I'm reliant on this for my mental health and my physical health and now it's all gone and it's out of my control. I don't know. Maybe I'm just projecting.
Yeah. No, I think so like from that part, yeah, I didn't know that I was gonna have the second surgery. And yeah, I actually found out that I was definitely going to have it like the week after I handed in the manuscript. So yeah, it was quite strange timing. But I think that, you know, when you think about like difficult things and if you would have the time to do it again, like you're hardly ever given that chance. And that's one thing I am really pleased with my second recovery is I have just given myself so much time. Like I gave myself a year before I started saving again. And just, I don't know, I think you just have to trust in that process. I'm actually about to finish work for like maternity leave, which is really difficult because I know I'm going to have to turn down things in that time that I will want to do. And it's so hard to like trust that they will come around again. But I'm really trying to lean into that and yeah, just trusting that things will come up at the right time and taking the space because you can never get the time back.
Mm-hmm. Well, you may feel differently once you have the actual baby. I'm just going to throw that out there. Things might not seem quite as enticing as they seem now, or maybe more so. So I don't know. Everyone experiences differently. But, you know, this is going to sound ridiculous, but you're so young. You have your whole life in front of you. But seriously, there are going to be 8 million other opportunities, and you're very, very talented, obviously, in many ways. So I have no doubt.
This is what I think. Like, there is no rush in life. Like sometimes you're sort of made to feel like you have to do this and this and this by like a certain age or whatever. That's been my biggest change like recently. Like there's no rush.
There's no rush. You already published a memoir. How old are you? 28, 29? How old are you?
29.
29. Yeah. You're good. You're ahead of the game.
Well, I finished it like in the end of the book, I'm 25. And I was like, it's kind of a weird thing to do, like writing a memoir at 25.
Well, I mean, I think memoir has changed a lot. It used to be, you know, basically like autobiography, like memoir of my whole experience. Now it's just a long personal essay, essentially. It's sharing a piece of your life that's really important and you don't necessarily need to do it at any age. I mean, I will say it took me until I was 46 to publish my own memoir, but there you go.
Well, it's like I had all of it in my head, and now it feels a lot better that it's not in my head, it's somewhere else. So
yes, it's very therapeutic. So are you writing any more in your, I know you're not painting, but what creative outlets are you using at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm actually like contracted for my second book at the moment, which is going to be about the female history of seafaring, which I think kind of, so it's nonfiction again. And like, this has been, I mean, there's two things. When I pitched the book, this wasn't the plan, but I think it's going to have a element of motherhood and how that's going to be in that sort of transition in my personal narrative in the book, along with looking at some of the sort of pioneering women in the past who've gone to sea and changed that landscape, whose stories we don't necessarily get told. So it's going to be a lot of digging around in maritime museum archives and some travel and hopefully some sailing for me as well. So that's the plan.
Amazing. What advice would you have for aspiring authors?
Well, I would like to give this to myself, but it's like, don't take things too personally. Like, you don't need everybody to like your work. You need one acceptance. You don't need 10. And then I think just find your own way. Like, I always read things saying, oh, you should try and write 5 minutes every day, but my writing actually gets worse if I do too much. So like, just find what works for you. Yeah. And I think have to just be a bit thick-skinned.
Is there a place in the world, body of water, someplace you are longing to explore?
Yes, South China Sea. And that's going to be hopefully the sort of central ground of my next book. So I'm planning, I don't know, I'm planning trips, but I don't know when it's going to manifest itself right now, because obviously I'm about to have this huge change in life. So yeah, we'll get there somehow, some way, somehow.
Yeah, you will not be moving like water. You will be moving like a very slow glacier with like 1,000 penguins on your back, something like that. Hannah, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books, especially as a soon-to-be mom yourself. And thank you for sharing your pain, your healing, your experience. I feel like you're going to be one of these famous like examples of like the modern day woman sailor. I feel like I'm going to see you on the cover of Time magazine in like 10 years and be like, I interviewed her.
Yeah, I'm up for it. My phone, I'm just at home a lot of the time, like hanging out with my cat. So, I never used to take any time off, and now I have more time, and yeah, I'm working it out. But
there are different seasons of life. This is just one, as you well know from your book. All right. Well, congratulations. Lovely chatting.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.